Hey, what's going on, guys? Black Rifle Coffee Company. This is Mike Glover, your host. And I got Dave Woods, good friend of mine. I want to talk to Dave today to bring you guys some value on military veteran entrepreneurship because, veteran advocacy is an important element for us. But I also want to teach you guys some hard lessons learned over the last few years. I've been talking to Dave through COVID and everything else about his business, some challenge that he's faced, and obviously bringing you the value of those lessons learned so you don't have to make those same mistakes if this is your wheelhouse. Dave, first of all, thank you for making the trip out here. I know it was a pain in the ass to get out here, but
well, I'm stateside now, so it's easy.
Yeah, you used to live in China,
and Hong Kong, 12 years, in Vietnam, and then Spain for the past 2 years.
Crazy, man. Yeah. Let's do this first. Let's give everybody kind of your background, who you are, what you own, and then we'll kick it off from there.
My name is David Wood. I was in the Marines 99 to 2005, went to University of Tennessee, and moved over to Asia in 2008. Over to Hong Kong, based in Hong Kong, was asked to be a liaison, building underground house churches, seminaries in China, and then basing in Hong Kong because it was prior 2019, was a free city. Started several businesses when I was out there, sourcing commodities, infrastructure materials, fabrics, tech stuff, and started Virtus in 2015, Virtus Outdoor Group.
Yeah, Virtus Outdoors has been, Dave supported me when I had like 2 employees. I didn't have anybody. Like, at least I had cool swag because I was wearing Virtus Outdoor stuff. But it's interesting to me because, your history of going from the Marine Corps to kind of living in a foreign country, facilitating all these things, it starts with these underground churches. And what does that even mean? What was your goal and objective in going into Hong Kong? I assume they didn't have a lot of those, and you're just the guy. What did that involve?
So I was asked right when I graduated. I double majored in philosophy and religious studies. Didn't even walk for graduation. Had a guy, Tom Henry, who worked with World Serve, take me out for a steak dinner and a couple handfuls of whiskey, and asked me if I wanted to move over to Hong Kong. I had full custody of my son, so my son Jaden and I moved over there. And before moving out there, I kind of did a trial run, and they sent me into China to Beijing, Chengdu, Shanghai, Kaili, and some of the western provinces to meet with underground house churches. So in China, if you are not worshiping the Communist Party, you're an enemy to the Communist Party, basically.
Insane.
Yeah.
So freedom of religion doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah. So if you wanted to worship God on any level, you'd have to do it underground.
If you're a Westerner and you want to go to an international church, you still have to show your passport. Everything's tracked. Everything's documented.
Before you go into the church?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So if you're a host nation, local citizen, that's not even an option for you? Or you could go to the churches, but...
You can, but you're absolutely tracked.
Insane.
So, and I mean, as of lately, they've kind of rewritten the Bible, like Mao's Red Book. And if you are even caught with a, ESV, NIV, Old King James app on your phone, you're in deep water.
Because indoctrination is happening through churches, like
right.
Many places across the world,
yeah.
Different religious sects. So how did that go for you? I mean, what did that involve?
Duct taping a couple $100,000 to my body and meeting with underground leaders and facilitating funding underground house churches, building underground seminaries, and then doing a lot of liaison work where we were making sure money was going to what they said it was going to. I mean, we busted a lot of scam artists that were taking money from the West and saying, we're doing this, and then showing the same children kind of in every video in every province. And I was like, guys, I'm half Dune Coon. Like, not all Asians look the same to me. I can actually tell that you guys are faking the funk.
Yeah.
So it was kind of busting some, con artists and then working, singling out the guys and gals that were doing God's work and helping to facilitate them.
So was religion a big component of your life at the time, or was this something that you were just propelled into, but you felt like an obligation? Obviously, you had a purpose for this, or you wouldn't have done it.
God saved me out of the trenches so many times, like life and death situations, healed me from hepatitis C, just over and over again has pulled me out of the absolute darkness. So when I was asked to do it, I knew that it was what I was supposed to do.
So all this, as far as on the American side, was on the up and up. Mm-hmm. There was a good purpose, good cause for what you were going to do.
Yeah.
How many years did you do that for?
I mean, I'm still involved in it, but I did it. It was just 2008, 2012. I started DJW Holdings in 2012 and really wanted to be self-sufficient, not have to fundraise to stay out there. And I really wanted a proper reason to be going in and out of China and other countries, for business visas and everything else.
Where did you see? I remember talking to you years ago. I think it was during COVID. Where did you start seeing crazy change in? I assume 2019 with the Hong Kong thing. Where was it like, hey, this isn't going to work anymore? You're in danger. Did you got kicked out of China, or you fled China because of all the things that were going on?
Because Hong Kong became China.
Is that the turning point for you? Is when basically it became China and they absorbed it and said this is us. There's no freedom here anymore.
Well, the turning point, I mean, it was crazy because, and you and I talked about this before, like anytime Fox and CNN are on the same page, there's some shady stuff going on.
Yeah.
Right?
I do that often. I look at both and go, if they're on the same exact page, something's wrong.
Yeah, it's one narrative and we're eating the propaganda. So China was never coming in. Like everybody was saying, give these Hong Kong protesters 2A and, they need to fight, yada, yada, yada. It was brainwashed Antifa. It's crazy. It was like the opposite of neo-Marxism that's going on here.
Yeah.
Right? They're professors at the Polytech, which is like their MIT, which was directly across the street from the flat that myself and my, premature surviving twins were living in with little, underdeveloped organs. And their professors told them, China's coming to take over. You guys are going to be second-class citizens. Hong Kong people have more of a silver spoon than anyone I've ever met. They're trilingual. They have British citizenship if they want it. These kids have if an idiot like me can go over there, a total bonehead, knuckle dragger, Marine, can go over and source and make money and go in and out of China. Like these kids have the world, it's their oyster. So they're being told they're victims and to go up against China. And it was just them tearing apart their own city and beating up their own police and
the Chinese
everything
let them
else.
do it because obviously that was
effective. The Chinese loved it.
Yeah, they're doing it.
They're
themselves.
Just like break your own stuff and we'll come in and fix it. The handover. The Brits, Hong Kong means sweet smelling port. The Brits used it as an opium den. Like they colonized, they treated the Hong Kong people as second class citizens. They are Chinese. It is Guangdong province.
Yeah,
I mean they speak Cantonese. That's their mother tongue. So it's just really interesting to see that firsthand and to see it fall apart. The protesters invited me into the Polytech. I think they thought I was a contractor. They were obviously being trained by contractors, whether you want to say that's Soros funded or New World Order funded, whatever. And invited me in to ask me if they were making their bombs correctly and showed me everything they were building from pipe bombs to fertilizer to Syntex to, the whole nine. And I went back and told my wife, I was like,
it's time to go.
It's time to get out of here.
Yeah. Because they were trying to subvert. Obviously, this is like sabotage. They're looking at targeting.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to war.
They literally were throwing Molotov cocktails at the LAVs and everything else.
Crazy, man.
It was wild.
Did it get dangerous on the ground as far as were you there on the ground while things like this were going on?
It was literally underneath my flat. So we had tear gas coming up into my flat. We were paying $4,500 a month for a flat there. It was like Legoland, and then overnight it was complete chaos. And with my daughters, with their premature lungs and everything, I was just like, this is, it made me want to be able to have my guns.
Where did you go from there?
So this is interesting. The minute that Trump supported the protesters and said basically we'll give them sanction, it was COVID overnight. So I left right before that happened.
Where they shut down everything.
Shut down everything.
Wow.
And we had gotten out of there. My son went and joined the Marines. My wife and her family went to Lithuania. She's from Klaipėda, which is the port city on the Baltic. They went there. I went to Spain because of all the stuff that Vogue does with Spartan Race.
That's right. Yeah.
And I went to Spain. My daughter, my oldest daughter that I found out about like 5 years ago that found me on Instagram. Whole side, another time, another story.
Where are the twins at? Where are the twins at in this?
Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay.
Where are they now?
No, where were they at when this went down?
In Klaipėda.
Okay.
So in Lithuania. So Jaden went to West Coast Hollywood boot camp. Should have sent him to Paris Island. My wife and twin daughters went to Klaipėda, and I met my daughter in Spain just to hang out. She's in Playa del Carmen. She flew over to Spain. And we met with the Ministry of Defense to do a contract with the sandbags and the rucks that we do, because we have all the IP for the workouts and everything. And it was like,
This is Spartan Races stuff.
well, this was the Ministry of Defense that I met through Spartan Race.
Oh, got it.
Because we'd partnered, I'd led a bunch of the events in Spain, and it was just a good military contract. So I tell that guy, I'm going to go to Vietnam, 2 weeks, I'll be back, and I'm going to get all of your sandbags and everything sorted. There's a really badass Korean factory that GoRuck uses now, Sinjian, that's in Ho Chi Minh. They do Arc'teryx, everybody, all the big boys. And so I go out there, and Venice shuts down. This is early 2020 now. So Venice shuts down, then Madrid shuts down, and we just watch the whole world start to shut down. It was just kind of a Hong Kong thing, and then everything shut down. So my 2-week trip turned into being stuck in Vietnam for 8 months.
So you got locked down in Vietnam for 8 months.
My mom died, couldn't fly back to Barrier, like literally was stuck there.
Oh my! Were you solo, or did you have your daughter with you?
No, I was solo.
Solo.
She and I met in Spain, and then she flew down to Mexico, and I flew to Vietnam.
And when you flew to Vietnam, you're facilitating business, trying to get these things accomplished. 2-week trip turns into 8 months.
8 months, yeah.
Dude, insane.
So
there was no government or liaison effort to get you back through a diplomatic channel?
There was nothing. Like when Vietnam shuts down, what they say is king.
Wow.
I mean, they were coming and taking my blood like 3 times a week in the hotel.
Were you stuck in a hotel the whole time?
I was stuck in a hotel for like 2 months. It was a 5-star hotel. It was actually the one in District 1 where the CIA agents were hiding in the walls and had to get airlifted.
Yeah.
That hotel's still there. So that's where I was staying. And then I just got a flat in District 2. One of my buddies that lives out there that does some company work was out there from Knoxville, Tennessee. So he was there to hang out with. And
they locked down the whole country in and out, right? Nobody can come in.
Nobody can come in
left.
And out. Yeah.
Crazy. So you're there. I assume you're going to work. You're building business relationships.
Oh, you could work. I mean, we weren't locked down within Vietnam. I mean, they were doing real data by the numbers. So there was 91 million people there, 91 to 92 million people. And there were like 400 COVID deaths.
Wow.
Just, I think like more people were dying from eating chopsticks in the back of their throat.
Yeah. Running into cars.
But they were looking at kind of, they're China's seafood supplier.
Yeah.
It's a great contract to have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, China was letting them still continue to fish and take care of their coffee and take care of their seafood. But yeah, it was nuts. Like I had to get a letter from the Ministry of Defense just to get out of there. I had to get a place in Spain and pay 2 years down to be able to show that I was actually moving there. And yeah, it was nuts. And we just randomly picked Spain because it was close to where my wife and daughters were. I had been to Malaga and Puerto Banús, just a holiday, and it was, nice place, southeast tip of Spain, near Gibraltar, and a 40-minute ferry ride to Morocco. So beautiful place. Yeah. And we just kind of went there and looked at the lay of the land for a couple of years and watched to see what COVID was going to do and what the election was going to do and what was going to happen over here. So
when you left and you went back to Spain, America's not on your radar right now. You're thinking like you're flexing international business. So you're staying outside the country for right now, and then your wife, because she's lives in a foreign country, Spain is the place that you could bring the family together.
Right, it's EU, so it was simple. I mean, we paid a lawyer, and I had residency within 2 weeks.
Oh wow!
So it was easy.
So you get to Spain, then what?
I got really tan, got jacked, ran
buff.
up and down.
I remember seeing the videos. Spain is. I mean, we always ripped through Spain, rode to Spain. Every rotation, and I had a lot of rotations ripping through Road to Spain, and one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I mean, I've been to Gibraltar, did all the tours and stuff. Yeah. It's beautiful. How long did you live there for?
2 years.
2 years.
Or about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Where does Virtus come in this timeline?
So we're selling, we're pumping out goods, and it used to be super cheap to have a 3PL in Hong Kong and just ship everywhere internationally. Yeah. Any stuff we wanted to ship to the States, a 40-foot container was like $4,200 to $4,700, 5 business days to get it across. It's like a 10X now. Yeah. It was the last container that we ended up shipping from Hong Kong took 70 days to get to San Diego. It was $30,000 instead of $4,200, and then it was $60,000 tariff to get it in. So 70 days.
That's insane.
And see, just sitting outside of LA.
Yeah. So business is good when it's good. COVID obviously messes all that up.
Yeah.
Hong Kong, China going into Hong Kong. How do you survive something like that? What are the ways that you navigate surviving business? Do you diversify? Do you reel back? Like what were your tactics?
I'd saved a lot, and I was still doing. I still do sourcing projects. Like we've got stuff that we're doing for NATO, totally away from Vogue, where it's just developing patented camo or filaments at the molecular level for patented fabrics, whether that's to make you invisible to nods or drones or whatever.
Yeah.
IR. But I mean, I was burning through my savings. It was stressful. I was going to sell Vogue to some guys in the Middle East, and when I could finally
Vogue is Virtus Outdoor Group, right?
Yeah, Virtus Outdoor Group.
Yep.
And I went back to Knoxville, Tennessee. Hadn't seen my family since my mom had passed. Went and saw my dad. And Mark Lonergan Hertel, I think you are a buddy of his.
Yeah.
He had been doing a bunch of building out kits for all sorts of different allies. And he said, go check out this factory that's in Tennessee. I went there. They were having problems getting government contracts because Biden gave their contracts to the federal prisons.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it was great for us. It opened the door. They said, we'd love to do some civilian stuff. And I worked with them for a little bit. They were in Scott County. And then I found, I bet you know, Alpha Industries. That's out of Knoxville, Tennessee. So the company that started with Alpha Industries is Valley Apparel. They're literally right on the Tennessee River across from Neyland Stadium. I went to UT, so it's right there. It's 15 minutes from my house. And that's who I'm working with now. So they said, we love your product. They're great Christian guys, family-owned business, and they're successfully, continually doing government contracts. It's a miracle that they're taking a fish as small as me, but they are very pro bringing business back to America. So I mean, their kind of long-term goal is doing a lot of civilian gear and just bringing jobs back, building out the infrastructure. And as China falls apart, I was looking at stats the other day that in 10 years, that right now they're not 1.6, they're 1.3 billion. And then in 10 years, they'll be down to 650 million because the majority of their population are elderly.
Wow.
Remember, it was one child rule, and they'd throw a daughter down the toilet or in the dumpster.
Yeah.
And so they've got this huge influx of males, and the largest population being the elderly.
Crazy.
So that whole supply chain is going to fall apart, before our eyes in the next decade.
Yeah, I just talked to Dave before the podcast and was telling him about the tariff and the taxes that I paid on one of the bags that we outsource, and paid $120,000 on a $200,000 PO. And they didn't give us, like, we paid the $200,000, get the product to ship, gets to port, and then they're like, oh yeah, there's extra $120,000 tariff. And I'm like, $120,000. I was like, what would this have been 2 years ago? And they're like, that would have been $20,000.
20, yeah.
And I'm like, so you added $100,000 to that, and that's just the way it is.
COVID.
Yeah, exactly. A great excuse, right? To not restore things back to the way they used to be. Look, I look at you as an industry expert. We use you as consultation for things, and I want people to understand kind of how things are done, especially with international relationships and business, of how things are done with clothing. When you say, a lot of people say BERI compliant. Mm-hmm. What does BERI compliant mean? What does that whole
So you've got OSI, you've got mil spec, and you've got BERI compliant. You've got TAA. So to do a large government contract, whether it's MOD, DOD, DOE, whatever, if you want that DLA funding, right? If you want that money, it has to be BERI compliant. Department of Logistics Affairs, I think.
Yeah.
So
if you want that contract, it's got to be BERI compliant.
Yep. Yeah. And BERI compliant means every single piece is made in the USA. The thread, the stitching, the fabric, the filaments of the fabric, the YKK zippers, whether it's YKK or Ideal, the zipper pulls, every single last component on that has to be made in the USA.
Really?
So that's BERI compliant.
I didn't realize that. So this is like one of your jackets that we're.
That's the newest line that's in production right now. Every single piece of that is made in the USA.
Okay, so
even the dye sublimation, even the heat transfer for the logo, every single part of that.
And it has to be based on the compliance to be BERI compliant.
Yes.
Meaning to get the contract for the military, everything has to be
everything has to be BERI.
Interesting. Yeah. So
now for you guys, like you as a Green Beret, as an operator in GRS, you have a Thor card.
Yeah.
You can buy whatever you want.
Yeah,
You can buy Arc'teryx, you can buy Patagonia, you can do anything. Doesn't need to be Berry compliant. But for that DLA funding for mass purchase orders
contracts
and contracts, it has to be Berry.
Now,
Correct.
one of the things that's interesting is I've seen companies like Arc'teryx, and originally a lot of the things they were doing was Berry compliant.
Leaf.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. What is that? Is LEAF an acronym for something, or is
Law
it?
Enforcement Armed Forces.
Okay, so
But that was made in the USA. That's why a Gore-Tex that's
Yeah.
normally $400 was $1,000.
Yes, right.
Because the labor in the U.S. is you're properly paying people,
Yeah.
$15 to $25 an hour for being, whether it's sealing like the Gore-Tex that I gave you, that's got 26 yards of tape on the inside that is sealed on that, and it's tested with 1.5 pounds of water pressure
Wow.
in 30 areas of the jacket. If it fails in one place, the U.S. government cancels that order.
Wow. So if you have a let's talk about this. If this was made in China, there's obviously not a lot of. I mean, there's QC, but you're using the cheapest vendors to get the material, to get the stitching, to get the zippers, and it's all consolidating in a factory, and they're making it. What is the price comparison as something? I mean, logistics and supply chain has changed.
I pay about $115 to make this one piece, Berry compliant, made in the USA. I would pay $30 to have that made in Vietnam.
Wow, so a third of what it's actually doing.
But then you have to ship it.
Yeah,
to pack it.
Now it's different.
You have to ship it.
Yes,
and then you have to stock it in the U.S. You have to pay the tariff. You have to have an HS code. You have to have an EIN.
Yeah.
Not just in the U.S. All you need is a UPC code. You just register with the government, UPC. You don't need an HS code. All the fabrics are already made in the USA. They're all OSI. Everything's certified. Everything's trackable.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's a wash.
Yeah. So one of the things that Dave is helping me with at my company, Fieldcraft Survival, and I'm kind of getting educated on as these things evolve. There's things that are happening now, even in the supply chain. I mean, all across the world, that are actually making it more realistic to actually make stuff in America. And one of the things is lead time.
Right.
Because, before, one of the big incentives outside of the margin, which was the obvious one, was if you have something and you order it from overseas and it ships, you know how much it costs. It's not a lot. And then that's going to take 30 days to get across the sea. And then you'll get it relatively quick, and you could predict that time. Now, even today, a year post-COVID, really, we're still looking at longer lead times, inconsistent manufacturing times, a whole bunch of drama, supply chain wise. And so you go to a factory in Tennessee and you say, I want to manufacture this, and they could spit it out in a week. And then it's to your doorstep because it ships in USPS, FedEx, whatever. And now it's more predictable lead times. So you don't have $1 million worth of inventory sitting on your shelf.
Right.
You could start to sell it in a reasonable amount of time. Versus, this is my drama at Fieldcraft. I order a large order of bags, 20, 40, or 80 liters that we make. I'm investing $500,000 in cash because we don't do a lot of things with banks. We use cash, and then I have to wait sometimes 6 months to get it to where I could sell it. And then I got the inventory on the shelf, and now by the time I recoup the money, it's a year later.
Exactly.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
Right?
Even in the best times, even before all of this, it was still 2 drops a year.
Wow.
So this took 6 months for this program in the U.S.
Yeah.
Because this fabric isn't just on shelves anywhere.
Yeah.
So I specifically put the treatments, infused it at the molecular level with treatments.
Yeah.
And made this
proprietary.
fabric. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, the lead time on these fabrics, you're looking at probably 45 to 60 days.
Yeah.
Right? But once that fabric's pumping and once that mill's making it, they can crank it out.
Once it's on the shelf.
Yeah, they can crank it out. They know the grams per square inch. They know the filament of the yarn, everything. So it's just the whole. It's been killer being back in the States and getting to be behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And seeing the fabric mills and having them work with me, and everyone's obviously speaking English and being pro-veteran and obviously pro-America. But once you have the fabrics, once you've ordered the zippers, all of that stuff you're holding at your cut and sew factory.
Yeah.
So you've got your fabric mill, you've got your camouflage printer, and then you've got your cut and sew. So my cut and sew is in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's the final stop. My 3PL, where I ship it out of and load it into Shopify, our 3PL for B2C is 10 minutes down the road.
Insane.
So I'm not even making. I'll probably make 1,500 of these. We're selling a bunch of these. The Helios with the hood to the Marine Corps. We've got a contract with the infantry officer training course, the gunner school, all the instructors.
Awesome.
And so they've got their personalized PVC patches. It's great as a Marine. I mean,
Yeah, it's really cool.
And it's one of my brothers who was my guide at boot camp in January 1999, who's a chief warrant officer for and runs those.
Oh, that's
and the
awesome.
minute that I brought it back to the States, he's like, hey, dude, now that you're making it in the U.S., we can do this.
Wow.
You know? And
Yeah.
so it's being able to say, you at Fieldcraft, you say, hey, Dave, I want, you know, we just pre-sold 1,000 of these Gore-Tex. Here's the sizes.
Yeah.
We just make those sizes for you
Yeah.
and your logo and spit them out the door, and they're done in 5 days.
Yeah, I don't have to have
Versus
500,000 of inventory sitting on the shelf.
Exactly.
Uh,
So the
or-
fabrics
yeah.
are there, the zippers are there, the zip, you know, the hood pulls, every piece, all the components. And once they're there, you just crank it out. So you do your EDM, your email direct marketing, SMS bumps, and it's literally hand to mouth.
Yeah, I'm working with Origin. I mean, we work with Jocko on his camo. We're gonna support Jocko because it's a military organization. He's got not military organization, a military veteran that we want to support. But his company that he's co-partnered with Pete from Origin. I'm wearing their jeans right now. This idea of American made and getting back to American goods. What I hate is all the people who say you need to buy American, right? American only. Your stuff's made in China. Your stuff's made here, but they're not willing to actually invest and pay for the American-made thing. It seems like what's turned and what's changed is if this was Leaf 5 years ago, this would have been $700.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And retail, what is this running?
We'll sell that for probably $325.
See, that's like if you're willing as an American to say it can only be American because it supports American jobs, American entrepreneurs, American fabric, like every piece of this, like you said,
Yep.
is made. That's the components are being made by Americans, bringing components together to be made by Americans.
Right.
Then you have to be willing to pay the price. And yeah, sure, you can go on Amazon and you can go on Alibaba and buy this very cheap, but it's not made by an American. It's made in a foreign country, and you literally are supporting all the things that you
hate.
represent that you hate.
Right.
So when people started coming at me, because obviously a Green Beret starts a company, starts releasing products, they're like, well, your stuff's not made in America. I'm like, guys, I can't make this North Face bag that's made in a North Face factory based off the capacity. They gave us a small percentage, which is nothing. I mean, it's like 0.001% of their capacity. I can't make that bag and sell it to you for $1,000 in America or made in America because you won't buy it.
Right.
So I think for me as an entrepreneur, the balance is diversifying and be willing to introduce. It's like trying to be healthy. Like, don't go cold turkey because you'll screw up your systems. Start figuring out ways to be more healthier, right? And that's what I want to do as a company is I want to figure out ways, like we're talking with you actually to make a line of things like this that are made in America that we could private label, that stands for quality, but again, doesn't sink our business because a lot of the core things that we make are made overseas. But again, due diligence, I use countries that are indicative of our past and our history. Vietnam, Korea. I'm Korean because of the Korean War. My dad met my mom. Vietnam. We fought for decades in Vietnam as Americans, and there's a reason why I think this is important to talk about. I want to ask you a couple questions on your experience in this overall process, man. You've been around the world. You've seen all the ins and outs, all the corruption, all the highlights of business and this thing. What are some highlights that you could talk about that have kind of shocked you about this whole thing international business-wise? And where has that brought you today? Because I know you live in Tennessee, your family's there, and now you're back home after a long wait around.
Right.
But is there anything that you could share with us?
I'm shocked and impressed at how much infrastructure in textiles is already in the States. If I knew, I mean, God put me on a whole cycle and whirlwind to lose the ego, fail a bunch,
And land back home.
Win at a second marriage, first marriage from, walking into Hooters as a young corporal, gave me a beautiful son.
Yeah.
Gave me a beautiful
He's a handsome
kid,
man.
most importantly. But, just being on that path and that trajectory and learning curve. But being in the States, I mean, I won't say it enough times, MOQ, minimum order quantity. You can do anything in the States and not have to break the bank. You know, there's been a bunch of stink about a month ago about people cutting out labels and putting made in the USA on it and then getting hit by the Trade Commission and, yada, yada, yada. I think that was an innocent mistake. I think that people said you can't get blanks anywhere. So I'm going to say, and I get nothing for saying this, I don't get paid by the company, I pay them, but US blanks. All of our t-shirts are made by US blanks. You're paying maybe 30% more than you would for Bangladesh or Vietnam, but you're not hitting these crazy MOQs. It's all made in the States. It's 100% organic cotton.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the name of that shirt company?
US blanks.
US blanks.
Yep.
Dude, I'll migrate right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, and it's immediate. It's immediate delivery, and like if you've got a facility like these guys do here,
I do, yeah.
For
I
the
got
press,
one up in Heber.
I mean, it's any Pantone, any color you want. I brought you one of the long sleeves today, and it's 100% organic cotton. So that was one of those.
Where's it made at?
They have a mill in California. They've got a mill in Texas, and they've got a mill in Columbia, South Carolina.
So rad, man.
Yeah,
I'll do that as a commitment to what we're talking about. I'll make every Philcraft shirt a US blank shirt. Why?
Yeah.
Like it needs to be that. I mean, I'll upcharge you guys.
But when you think about the shipping and think about what we're paying custom-wise or anything else,
probably equals out. Yeah.
It's a wash, and you're not having to sit on those crazy minimum order quantities. So like when I would order my jackets, you have the Proteus, the original one. You have the whole set. I mean, that Proteus jacket would cost me $80 to make. Great jacket, the kind of mock Gore-Tex.
It's one of my favorite ones, yeah.
But we had to order 3,000 of them.
And that's like capital.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Minimum order quantity, 30% down, 70% delivery. Then it's FOB. Then you're paying to ship it, whether it's CIF, cost insured freight, LDP, landing duty paid. Even back in the day, you're still waiting because you order that fabric. And this has happened a bunch of times. So on our website, I am colorblind. Just to put that out there before I finish the story, we had a purple Helios and a purple Estrellas jacket. My dumbass thought it was blue. I approved it as blue. My wife and some other people were like, that's really ballsy to put purple on there. It's lavender. And I'm like, oh, man, I approved it. And we had what was supposed to be coyote, and it turned out to be prairie sand. Now, the prairie sand, Patagonia had run this. Arc'teryx had run it. And the Chinese mill that made all the fabrics and sent them to Vietnam, there's a 45 to 60-day lead time before it gets to the cut and sew. It gets shipped over. So if you're not happy and you want to change the fabric, you've just lost a year of sales. It's too late.
It's too late.
It's too late. They'll give you a discount if it's not exact, where they'll pray you're a dumbass colorblind Marine that approves it. But, you're stuck with it. And that's that. And you'll always have guys that are, a 3XL that get pissed. And they're like, dude, why are you making a double XS for little tiny people and you're not making a triple XL? And I'm like, dude, because I'm paying by the yard. And it's 2.5 yards to make your jacket. And in Gore-Tex, where it's $34 a yard, that's a pretty big difference. So everybody says they want to buy it, like you said, until you make it and you're sitting on, 150 double triple XLs. Now in the States, you do a pre-order and 50, 100 dudes order it, they get it. Yeah. Same cost, you're not making them pay anymore. And you've already got the zippers ordered. Same with extra small. Yeah. Same thing.
When you do a pre-sell, what is your average lead time from the pre-sell to the date of delivery for them? I know it's based off, obviously, what you're being made, but what's a good range for consumers without losing their shit, without getting crazy?
So we'll say in an email, and like you, we've got great customers.
Yeah.
They're in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
They'll buy every color of that jacket just because they love the ethos. Virtus is Latin for warrior virtues.
Yeah.
They just want to support it. But we'll say, like, we're doing a pre-order and it's going to be 2.5 weeks. And the minute that 2.5 weeks is over, it's done. It's cut. Those sizes are in. It's 5 days to make that stuff. They'll ship out the next day.
Because you can go directly to the factory, have that conversation.
Yep.
Versus a 1 week going back and forth with a Chinese liaison.
Oh, you'd never be able to do that in Asia.
Yeah, you can't even.
You get your delivery maybe if you're a huge player like Arc'teryx, you're getting a delivery every quarter.
Yeah.
But most people, it's summer and winter.
So I think from a business perspective, it's important to understand the biggest issue you could run into business, which is the biggest issue I've run into as an entrepreneur, is cash strapping your company. Because if you don't take debt, we don't have a lot of debt at Fieldcraft, and we take, let's say we're ordering 1,000 bags, mobility panel packs. We order 1,000 of those, and it takes us 6 months to get. We are out that cash.
Yep.
And that cash isn't utilized to activate other things like marketing, media, the list goes on. So the ability to do this for business, this is B2B conversations, is super important and more critical than ever before. And your surprise, did the infrastructure exist and you just didn't see it because you weren't home? Or is it just now getting squared away? Because I remember the video you shared with me of the factory, and it had robots and shit.
Yeah.
It had Americans working on, and I'm like, this is a factory. This looks like an advanced factory in Japan,
Right.
And it's in Tennessee,
In Scott County, in the mountains.
in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So is that something that has existed, or have they been forced as an industry to get their shit together because of all the things going? Or I assume it's an opportunity because all the shit show that's going on with the logistics.
All of the highest tech factories have existed, but they've never done civilian gear.
All very compliant, contracts.
Compliant. Exactly.
And now those military players, those contracts, they're sharing some of their capacity for civilians.
Yeah, and they're very open. Like I reached out to Pete from Origins and chatted with him because he and I both use fabrics from OSI. We both use the same camouflage printing mill that's in Tennessee. And it's a very open thing. Nobody's trying to hold their sourcing back. That's why I say use U.S. blanks. You know what I mean? They're great.
Yeah.
I'm using them. It's simple, it's easy, and you're supporting American business. And blanks and tees and hats are just, they sell like crack.
Yeah, it's cash.
And so it's a constant turnaround of those, and you're supporting U.S. businesses.
See, I think the importance of the start point of all this is transparency.
Yeah.
Like when we release, when GoRuck has gotten hit up for this, where GoRuck releases a bag and I see the sponsored ad, and then people are attacking the company because they're like, how could you charge so much money for a bag? And you're like, this specific bag is made in America. And you're like, you guys are saying to a business who's making things in America that it's not right. But I think what's more important is talking about margins. Because you look at a margin, you say, I pay $100 to make this jacket and I sell it for $300. Most people would go, well, you're ripping people off. It's like, no, man, that's how business works in the margin because you have the overhead, the employees, the keep the lights on and all that stuff. Did you notice anything when coming back home away from international business? What are the obstacles that we face as a country to deal, whether it's B2B business or as consumers working through this conundrum, this complexity, it seems?
Well, I kind of had to reinvent the wheel and thank God, the factory is so semper gumby and flexible with me because we had to change the cutting. You and I have put on 3 and 7 layers where there's a ton of slack in the arms and this and that. When you're paying by the yard, that's just you're burning cash, right? None of the factories have logos. So all the heat transfer, all the PVC patches, you're having to outsource somewhere else. All the inner care labels, kind of all the stuff that's done for you in Asia, it's just a one-stop shop. You've got to now figure out. But at the end of the day, you're creating more jobs. But it's fun because then you're getting to go, like I use Label Industries. Again, Knoxville, Tennessee, Label Industries. They do all of the printing and all the embroidery on the U.S. blanks that we buy. Reach out to them. They're an amazing company, Mark Galehouse. And Mark will put in all of the inner labels. They'll do all the heat transfers, everything. Then they'll get that to Valley Apparel, my cut and sew, and the guys will put it on. So it's kind of learning again. Okay, I've got to order hang tags from here. I've got to get UPC codes from here. I've got to get the UP stickers. I've got to buy bags to pack them in from here. I've got to get sexy boxes if it's over $250 for an item to put it in and package it. I love the brand 10,000. I think they've nailed it. It's cool to see somebody actually getting in Lululemon space. I love Lululemon too.
Great quality.
Sassy. I feel
my
great
favorite
wearing
gym shorts are Lululemon.
They're
gym
great.
Shorts.
It's great. And I love how minimal both of their logos are. Like I like how it's just you can wear it and nobody really knows what you're wearing. They both literally make the tag to where you can pull it out. immediately.
Oh, wow.
You know, in the back of the neck, Lulu and
Yeah.
10,000. But it's interesting as a sourcing guy seeing 10,000 because I bought their stuff from day one, and seeing the stuff they've made in Vietnam and made in China are different sizes. So like I'm a large in some of them, and then I buy a shirt and I'm like, damn, am I a fat ass or what's going on? And it's like, oh, this is made in China. It's a different pattern file. You know, it's a different tech pack, and their designers haven't been in cahoots with each other. And so it's, you know, bringing it back to the States and having everything dialed in with pattern files, tech packs. You know, the pattern files are made on Gerber, the way that it cuts, and it's just, you know, everything is aligned and will always be aligned. Every small will be a small. Every XL will be an XL.
So you guys are you're reinventing the process
Right.
with American manufacturers.
Yeah.
And do you see, looking out across the landscape, like the Origin and the Pete's of the world, is this something that's catching on? Or do you think everybody's going to default back to the old ways, just to international business? Like for me as a company trying to diversify and also just trying to survive, I'm like, I can't afford to do international business anymore. Despite the margin loss, the lead times, holding that capital, there's a whole bunch of justification for stepping away from it anyway. Do you see people jumping on that bandwagon?
Smaller businesses, yes, immediately, because they don't want to pay the tariffs, the shipping costs. They don't want to get stuck with $100,000 and then another $100,000. Companies like Apple, where you think about how many iPhones they can fit into a 40-foot container. I mean, I couldn't even guess. I would say a 40-foot container full of iPhones or MacBook Airs is a couple billion.
Yeah, massive amount.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you're making chairs or making things that take up that are that take up space, the margins are gone. If we go to war, I mean, if there is some stuff that really pops off, it'll be interesting because originally I would make and use tech fabrics in Taiwan. Taiwan was its own country. Completely different. I mean, you're very versed in the whole chip thing that's going on, and thank God that's the seeds have been planted to have that all, you know, here on the home front. But I don't think companies, even the big boys like Patagonia and Arc'teryx, will want to air freight stuff over because that's not. I mean, fuel prices are going one direction, and it's as immediate as air shipping can be. If you're making 5 million garments per quarter in that SKU, your margin's gone air shipping.
Yeah, it's
And
super expensive to air ship.
when there's problems at the port and China's not releasing, like Shunda is where in China is where Arc'teryx makes the majority of their stuff. And so if that port gets locked down, or Xiamen gets locked down, which is, you know, a 40-minute boat ride from Taipei, you know, which is where the majority of Patagonia is made. So, you know, the minute that stuff's locked and stuck and there's a supply chain issue, they'll have to come to the U.S.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about that, but just talking about potential contingencies, if we're talking about a war between America, call it the United Nations, and Russia and China, because China will be involved in some capacity, all those ports, all those the air shipments, it gets shut down in some way. Will that thrive American-made business?
Yes.
It would blow
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, materials, period, would be shortcut.
Yes.
And then now, since we can make it in-house. So it's crazy to conceptualize that this entire thing's made in the U.S. How is the material made here? I assume there's a few manufacturers that spool this material,
Yep.
and it's based on cotton that's made in North Carolina.
Polyester, cotton, nylon, everything. So Everest does a ton of stuff. So this is interesting. So Everest, which is in North Carolina, about 2.5-hour drive from me, OSI uses, Brookwood uses, MMI uses. So guys, Google these companies. MMI, they're out of Cleveland, Ohio. Brookwood, I'm sure everybody that's military knows about Brookwood.
Yeah.
Cryptex used a ton of Brookwood stuff. And OSI. Those are the three biggest players. They're all doing civilian stuff now. So they supply to Patagonia, they supply to Arc'teryx, they supply to Lululemon. So for example, I went to Everest and saw they've got, I don't know, man, I'd say 1 million square foot facility out there. Wow. Taiwanese investment, but it's an American factory.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not a factory, it's a mill.
Yeah.
So they have the option there if you want it berry compliant or if you're doing civilian and you don't care. So it's half the price to get yarn flown in from China or Taiwan, and then they actually spin that there into the fabric. So you can't sell that to the U.S. government. Even though the fabric's made in the USA, the yarn is not made in the USA.
Interesting.
So they have...
But you can reduce the cost for civilians
totally reduce the cost.
Yeah.
Now, we're not doing that. Everything we're doing is buried just because we want to be able to say, even to the blanks, like using U.S. blanks, every single thing now is made in the USA.
I love that, man.
Is stateside. Everything.
Yeah.
Every last thing. The freaking decals, the sticker, like every last... swinging sausage. Every
so
last
you're
piece.
migrating the old Virtus completely over to American made. I love that, man.
Yeah.
The most disappointing thing I've ever had happen in my life in this clothing aspect is I went to Pendleton's factory in Pendleton, Oregon, and I'm a big fan of Pendleton, but mostly vintage Pendleton because I've thrifted it. I never paid a lot of money. People are like, "Oh, you got an awesome Pendleton collection," and I'm like, "All of this is from a thrift store, guys." Like I never realized how expensive Pendleton was.
Yeah.
I was buying it, and it was reasonable prices, thrifting it. But as I started looking at tags, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's like most of it's made overseas. And then I went to the mill, which isn't a mill at all. You go into the mill, I guess one of the original mills, and there's material that is spooled up like it looks like it's in a mill, but there's no actual physical mill there. And then everything in the pro shop on the front end is made overseas. And I'm like, what? I'm so confused right now. Pendleton was like Washington-based, Oregon-based, and stands for all of these things that's American-esque. And everything here is made in Vietnam or Bangladesh or wherever. And I never realized, like, even the OG origin stories, like Filson, like Pendleton, they're all outsourcing now overseas. So you got a small business that's capable of doing this, and then you have big business who's capable of doing it as well, but they're not willing to.
Right.
Is it because they've already committed to the margin and the system, and they're just like, I'm not going to do it?
Well, look at GoRuck, for example. Like, all their stuff's made in Vietnam now.
Yeah, which is I don't I mean I've talked to the owner and CEO of that, and obviously it's about cost, it's about business.
They got some good private equity in.
Yeah.
And they're, I don't want to say they sold out, but business is business, and I think they've done a great job. I think their event evolutions are badass. I think it's sick how they were able to take selection, pre-selection, and turn that. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
the
it's
event
brilliant.
experience component is rad.
And, it just that's – and we can talk about failures that I've had. I've had to set up multiple LLCs. Now we're a SDVOSB.
What the hell is that?
Service Disabled Better Known Small Business.
What? How come I don't have that?
Just apply for it.
What is that? What is that? Oh, that is important when you do military contracts because you get the.
You don't just have a cage code and a DUNS.
Yeah.
Now you are.
You're
honestly, bro,
prioritized.
it's fighting back against the woke.
Yes.
It's like, all right, I've earned this. You want to play that game of woman-owned factory, minority-owned factory? Okay. Or company, sorry, LLC. All right.
Yeah. I'll check every block.
I'm a disabled vet. We'll
I'm a minority. I'll check every block.
Yeah. That puts you, for the DLA funding, it puts you at the top tier, so you get first dibs.
What percentage of your business now is DLA or military contract related versus the Virtus component, which is civilian related?
I'll tell you in Q1.
Yeah.
Because this stuff's on the line. Like we don't have any. It's rolling right now. We don't have any of this stuff on the website. The only purchase orders that we have done and filled are for Quantico. But that's still not a government contract. That's because my buddy runs the courses up there. We could have made this in freaking Pakistan, and they would still be able to buy it. He just, as a badass and brother of mine, was like, he's been wearing it no matter where it was made personally. But when he saw we were bringing it back to the States, he said, now I want to bring this up. So he flew me up there. I went and did a dog and pony show and met the brass, and they all loved it. Loved the, honestly, they were like, we've been wearing Patagonia and stuff that doesn't even want affiliation with the U.S. government or with the military.
Yeah.
So we've been waiting for somebody to make stuff in the USA that's on the same quality tier.
Yeah, I was curious because I was wondering if military contracts now are more lucrative or less lucrative because of the downturn on war fighting and things that are going on in the budgets. If that's not even a thing anymore, because all those companies, Patagonia, most of them blew up. Like I was wearing Patagonia issued stuff in special operations, and people were like, I was in an Apple store once, and the kid goes, "Is that a Patagonia?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Where'd you get that?" I was like, "I was issued it." And he goes, "Oh, I know exactly about that." He was a Patagonia fanboy, and he goes, "I know exactly about that."
He was an operator fanboy too.
Yeah, he's like, "Ooh, that thing's sexy." He's like, "You can't get that." And I'm like, I just got issued. I don't care. I
Right.
just wear it because I got issued it. But people were surprised to hear, wait, Patagonia, a seemingly woke company, is supporting the military? Well, when there's dollars and cents involved,
Right.
then
Right.
yeah, for sure.
So our big cash cow has always been our B2C, just direct to customer. That's your MSRP. When I say I'm going to sell this for XXX, I'm always saying in my head, I can offer a 30% discount to our EDM, to our email direct marketing, to people who've always, spent money with us. But on the website, it'll be this. And then you have the squeeze room, you've got the elbow room to give a 30% discount. Now, when you're selling B2B, like the B2Bs we sell to are Optics Planet, Venor, Camp Saver, which are all owned by the same mother company. Now, they'll want 60% off of MSRP, right?
Wow.
So that's a harder, depending on the size of their purchase
They
order.
want 60 points out the gate?
Off the MSRP. Yeah. But they warehouse it, they buy it.
Yeah.
So it's not like
They're
you're
front in the
sitting there and
inventory, yeah.
drop shipping. But it's interesting, and I'll share this with you live time as we do it, and I'm waiting until we have everything fulfilled. So in the government B2B, buyer to buyer, you've got Quantico Tactical, you've got ADS, and you've got Darley.
Yep.
Those are the three big players. So you basically get a senior sales rep, and you offer him a floating margin. And you say, if you sell 5,000 of these, you can make XXX. If you sell 500 of these, you can make X. They're the salesman.
Yeah.
You give them the incentive.
They're at the expos. They're at the trade shows.
They're doing it all, and they're taking it to the National Guard. They're taking it to 75th Rangers. They're taking it to da-da-da. It's not getting it into the PXs. It's getting it to them because they're getting paid commission on their work. And that's the beauty of being able to make it in the U.S. because if you're making it overseas, even if they say, oh, it can be TAA compliant. So TAA compliant means it's made in a country that we have a good SOFA
Trade
agreement with or
relation,
whatever, trade and relation. Exactly. But if you've got a 45-day window to fill that and you miss it, you've just fucked yourself and it's done.
Yeah.
And you've got a black eye.
Yeah.
They're going to say to other sales reps that you try to go to, oh, dude, don't go with Virtus. They couldn't fill this. I wasted this much time. Because if it's not filled, they're not making their commission. They've just spent all that time and burned a relationship. So having it in the U.S., having the fabrics there, having the zippers there, you can fulfill it in a week. So that's going to be my biggest, Tristan Hungerford, Casey, he was combat controller. He's a GB now. He's one of my co-founders, great guy. He's been waiting for us to have this so he can walk it through. So he'll kind of be our point of contact, and he'll reach out to the senior sales rep. Sean Fleming, I'm sure you know him, SEALs. He was lieutenant colonel with Triple Canopy. He's one of my shareholders as well. The owner of Quantico Tactical was his instructor at Buds. So he's been waiting, and he's buddies with General Darden from Kingdom. So they've all been waiting for the production lines to be done.
Yeah.
And then they say, okay, let's see how this arena goes. Now, it might be a total flop and nobody wants it, and that's okay. We'll do our SEO and do what we've always done. And, it's always a mountain to climb, dude. And you can have a bad year or a bad quarter or 2 bad years, and it's the people who stick it out that make it. You survive, you make it. I've never met anybody with a success story, unless they're a trust fund kid, that says, oh, dude, it was easy as hell. It's if you're willing to freaking put skin in the game and give people sweat equity that can really perform, you'll make it. You can weather the storms.
I'm currently in this conundrum right now. We're doing everyday water, and the beverage business, just like this business, is very difficult to navigate, full of challenges and obstacles. But I mean, that's entrepreneurship, right? That's what it's there for. Before we close out the podcast, I want to ask you a few questions about. You talk about lessons learned. What if you had to highlight a couple lessons learned that you're like, guys, never make this mistake because this is the mistake I made? What would they be?
Choose your investors so wisely.
Yes.
Choose
I've actually
your
done
investors.
that well.
I mean, choose your investors so wisely. Cash is always easy to get. My biggest failure was ego and failure to be exposed for not really knowing every part of my business. Hire a great team. I design stuff and then I get it to a tech pack designer and she gets it to her pattern file designer and it's right. Dude, I failed so hard on making women's leggings and didn't go to proper women to test these things out. And I mean, it was bad. We had a generation that was like a gen that went out that was just completely inappropriate looking.
Well, you mean you being a connoisseur of yoga pants didn't do well in developing?
Rudy Reyes and I didn't try them on and do yoga enough together. Well, for long enough sessions. But, it's been humbling and enlightening to just drop the ego. You
have changed. I will say you have.
Sobriety helps with that too. 5 years sober.
I am sober as well. When
life change.
There's some things that happen, but I feel clear. Like I drink bourbon every night.
Yeah,
and
me
think
too.
that's completely normal.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I don't need it, and it's made everything clear to me, and also just cleaned up everything, and that's I could tell that you're a different person here today. Sorry, what was the other one? You have any more?
Well, it was just having mentors that will call you on your bullshit.
Yeah.
It's easy to have a bunch of yes men around you.
Yeah.
But that's the worst thing in the world when you hit hard water.
Who are your mentors right now?
Tim Scott is probably one of my biggest mentors. He's one of my co-founders. Extreme bow hunter, goes out and hunts grizzly bears with a longbow, doesn't even pack a gun.
Yeah.
John Lawler, very successful businessman in Knoxville, Tennessee, that just mentors 28 guys now, has his, sold some construction companies, doesn't need to work another day in his life.
Really?
And tells me what I don't want to hear, but what I need to hear. And then my father.
How do I get on that bandwagon?
I'll introduce you to both of them.
Is there a 28? Can he get 29?
He can get 29.
Dude, I'd love that.
He's always got room for a Green Beret.
I would love that, man. Yeah. I need the mentorship. And your father.
Yeah.
Tell me about your dad.
Vietnam corpsman, was wild as hell. Got kicked out of Wheaton College, got drafted, went to Vietnam. Married my mom, who was first generation Ashkenazi Jew, Jewish immigrants, hence the tan, the tan and the afro pulled back. Found Christ, was going to go to law school, found Christ, changed his life. My mom converted, Messianic Jew, and has been a pastor, was senior pastor at Cedar Springs for 26 years, big church in Knoxville, Tennessee. Retired when my mom died and then got called back. So he's the senior pastor up in Annapolis at EP. So he's living on Chesapeake Bay and shining that torch and loving it, because all of these kids that could go to, they're not kids, all these young men and women that could go to Ivy League schools don't want to be part of this extreme neo-communist woke culture. And so they're going to, these schools. And at Annapolis, the midshipmen, he's getting to mentor them, and you're getting all these, SEAL officers and admirals, old Marine Raiders, MARSOC guys, generals that are getting to pour their lives into these young people to help fix this nation. So rad, he's man. At the end of his life, he's really getting to be there. I'll turn, how old am I? 79. I'll turn 43 this week. You're getting old when you know
I'll be there
freaking old you are.
Next month, yeah.
And so he's in town now, so we'll get to celebrate my birthday.
So rad.
But he's been a mentor, and he's really aligned me with folks that are, good, solid Christian warriors, and that just not Bible bangers, but people that want to see you thrive and that want to really spread the gospel by loving and not judging and not being an inward congregation, but shining light. You got to catch a fish before you clean a fish, and I had to get caught many times to get clean.
So rad, man. Such a rad story, such a humbling experience that you had overall, and it's good to see you back home, man.
Thanks, brother.
When I heard you're coming back to the U.S., I was actually excited, because I'm like, David needs to be back home.
Yeah.
I mean, the country, in a weird way, saying this outside of service, needs you and your expertise with stuff like this, because a lot of people don't understand how this works, but to mentor young men and women who want to start businesses, who need to understand and navigate these issues before making that mistake over the course of 10 years and destroying their lives, can listen to you and potentially thrive. I want to say I appreciate having you on the podcast, and I'll leave it to you for closing thoughts.
Yeah, I appreciate being on it. VOG has been great. I mean, Virtus is Latin for warrior virtues. It's been awesome getting to be in a place where you're bringing people back together and not separating them. My goal with this is to sell this by 2028. If speeding up that time, maybe 2025, go get my counseling degree at UT and then work with veteran drug addicts and people in dark places and be their psychologist. So that's next on the horizon.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
We all got those goals and those aspirations. I think that's what you got to do. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online and the website for your business? VogStore.com.
Don't buy anything on there right now. We're flipping all that inventory. It's all made in Vietnam. Wait till late next month or December. Everything on there will be Barry compliant. Website will be completely redone. I'm David J _Wood on Instagram. You probably won't be able to find me because I'm completely shadow banned.
Yeah.
And then Vog.global is our Instagram, Virtus Outdoor Group, Facebook. Those are not shadow banned.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Dave.
Thanks, brother.
Cool. Thanks, guys. See the show notes below to catch all the links. I'll see you next time. Peace out.
That concludes today's training. Any questions? Woo! Drum titties, boy!